A very good afternoon to all of you. Welcome to MRSI's Wednesday webinar. And we have a very exciting topic for you today. India, an attractive hub for global data and insights capability center. We are in the sixth season of Wednesday webinars, as our regulars will know, and for the benefit of those of you who are joining us for the first time, Wednesday webinars is a flagship knowledge sharing platform of the MRSI where we meet every month on the second or third Wednesday and share topics with August speakers on activities or technologies or researchers that are actually pushing the boundaries of research. So with that context in mind, today we have, like I mentioned earlier, the topic of India as a center of excellence for research and analytics work. Next slide, please. A quick introduction to the volunteers. We call ourselves the webinar committees, and we also rotate as hosts for the webinars. You have Amitabh Mishra, who's head of insights and analytics at Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, India. He's also part of the managing committee at the MRSI. You have me today as your host, Sundar Muthuraman. The other members of this voluntary team are Mukul Gautam, Vice President and Chief of Capacity Building at Purple Audacity, Samir Grover, who's the founder and CEO of Crownet, and Jayesh K. Menon, who's the Global Director of Insights at Entropic Technologies. Quickly about the MRSI, established in 1998. MRSI is a not-for-profit association and quite uniquely of both providers and buyers of research and insights. The purpose of the MRSI is to create awareness of the industry among public at large, as well as the government. We will shortly introduce you to a very distinguished panelist who represents the government for us in this webinar. We also, as MRSI, establish and promote professional standards when it comes to work and work ethics. And we provide a platform for professionals to engage and showcase their work and collaborate on common issues. Next slide, please. We have an exciting panel of speakers who, some of them are already on camera, some of them having camera issues, and they will shortly be seen if they fix the camera issues. And one of our panelists, Dr. Abhay Sinha, is running a bit late. He will join us sometime during the session, and I will introduce him again. Dr. Abhay Sinha is the Director General of Services Export Promotion Council, the SEPC. They help industries like us to represent our offerings in other markets and help grow our business. We have Devarshi Banerjee, Executive Director at Kantar, and also leads a global capability center for a large multinational company. And he will share his experiences in that context later on in the session. We have Sujit Dora Tepal. He's the data science lead at PepsiCo's capability center in Hyderabad. We have with us Nitesh Priyadarshi. He's the Vice President CMI South Asia at Unilever. And Ayal Majumdar, a Senior Principal at IQVIA. Welcome all. Thanks for taking time to be with us. I'm sure our audience is waiting to hear what we have for them. But before I get there, let me introduce Mithali. Many of you will know her if you're regulars, like I keep saying. Mithali is the Director General of MRSI. The industry body runs thanks to her. It's her everyday job to make sure that we are all on our toes. She and her team make sure that we as panelists gather in time, just taking the Wednesday webinar in context. That's just a small part of her job. Mithali, why don't you share a bit about the industry sizing report, a big, again, flagship context that MRSI does, and tell us a perspective of what we can take from that study in the context of the topic. Over to you, Mithali.
Thank you. Thank you, panelists. So to give a little bit of a context to our topic of today, I'll share with you a pioneering piece of work that MRSI had done in 2021. So what we did was we tried to figure out the size of industry and a very changing industry. You know, like 1 or 2 decades ago, if you look, for example, at this extreme left side of the map, you can see there would have majority been only full service market research industries. But when we did the study, we realized there were many more players who were actually delivering research and insight services out of India. So, and one such important type of player was what we call the captives, which in 2021 contributed to 18% of the 2.3 billion USDs that was the revenue of research and insight done out of India. When we're talking about captives, the definition we use broadly is to say that, you know, many multinationals have set up captives or fully owned dedicated centers in India because they realize that with the talent cost benefits of offshoring in India, they are able to not only service their global demands, but also they're able to keep control of their sensitive data and also proprietary techniques. So this really gives you a backdrop of how important captives are as a trend that we see in this country. A couple of other things also is that, you know, when you're looking also for the type of services, the captives contribution is more or less in the analytics piece. So if you're looking at the right top corner of the map, you'll see that 52% of work done out of India is an analytics space, and much of what the captives do tends to be in the analytics space. So now if we move to the next slide, even back in 2021, we saw that both analytics business and also the contribution of work done for clients outside India was expected to grow over 5 years. And we have not done a full report update in 2022. However, last year we did do an update on some of the key metrics. And if we look at the next slide, we'll see that indeed the estimated promise, we're very much on course to meet. Because if you're looking at analytics from 2021 of 1.15 billion, it's 1.43 billion in just 1 year. And similarly, if you're looking at the revenue growth from international clients, you're seeing that in 2021 it was 1.67 and it's become 2.06 in 2022. We are literally working on the 2023 numbers, but, you know, without giving away our report, this is a trend that we very much will expect to be continued when we share the update of our numbers this year. You know, this was just a backdrop that I wanted to give, and I'll hand back to Sundar, who will now get on to the main topic that we're going to discuss today.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mithali. I think it was, you know, till the report came out, you know, we had a different perspective of what the industry was and what constituted the industry. And obviously, the report opened our eyes to how large we were. You know, it's like if you're saying it's $2.7 billion, we are comparable to several other industries in terms of value to the economy. Not only that, you know, and as you pointed out, a significant majority of that is coming from exports. Exports either as captive from within organizations and companies or independent service providers kind of driving that. So as you will see in our panelists, we have a mix of audiences who can throw light on what's happening in this space. We have multinational companies who deliver work to other global markets. We have service providers which do the same. So I look forward to hearing very interesting perspectives. For our audience, you know, unfortunately, the GoToWebinar doesn't allow you to ask audio questions. You can type in your questions in your, you know, GoToPanel. At an appropriate time later during the session, I will bring those questions to the panelists. And if we are not able to answer all your questions in the time that we have for the webinar, we will seek the help of our panelists to create their responses. The same will be hosted on the MRSI website. and you can go and access the details from there. With that, if panelists just check your microphones in case you have muted it, you can unmute. We'll just launch right into the questions. Diana, if you can get to the next slide. Now, here is a question, show me the money question, right? Mithali spoke about the billions of dollars, but I'm sure it's some part of it that all of you are contributing to. What is the estimate of your share of India when it comes to the data insights capability centers? Now, you may not want to share income numbers or head counts or what it costs or whatever, but just give us a perspective of what it means to kind of deliver work in the context of a capability center to other markets and other parts of your respective companies. So Debarshi, if I can start with you as a service provider and a leader for one of the larger capability center businesses with Kantar, how would you answer this question? And once you're done, you can pass the mic to Payal to share her views on the same.
Sundar. So I'll mention two perspectives. I won't get into revenue part, but one is the people part. So we are a global COE and we are completely focusing on the international business. So we don't, as a unit, we don't handle anything in India, but we have roughly close to 350 talent pool entirely focusing on the international business. That's the one perspective, the size part. The second part, if you take Kantar's top 20 client, out of the two clients, we are handling close to 50% of the entire revenue or work. So that's just other perspective. So it's like for a couple of critical clients, they're both Kantar's top 20 clients, we're handling roughly 50%. So one, the large base as well as the criticality from handling top client. That's my update from Global COE. Over to you, Payal.
Thanks, Devarshi. I would agree also with Devarshi in terms of not getting into the numbers part of it, but from the business that we handle, and so I would call it like globally we account for almost 70 to 80% of the top clients that IQVIA services, the business being handled from the GCC, which is Global Delivery Center. Apart from that, there is a huge volume of all the syndicated reports and the data part of it that IQVIA stands for. So that majorly being driven, I would say 100% that's being driven by the Global Delivery Center. So both custom and a large part of custom and syndicated business being driven from the Global Delivery Center.
Thanks, Payal. I think it's what I'm hearing both of you say is it's almost all or a good part of work for some client, and that's what Debarshi you mentioned, and Payal you said even internally, while the interface and delivery might be happening in respective companies, the bulk of the heavy lifting of what gets done and how the reports get done are being done from your GDC in India. So Nitesh, the same question to you. I know Unilever has created some hubs for supporting global business needs. How would you answer this question?
Yeah, thanks, Sundar. So I think in our case, Sundar, for Unilever, it started more as a capacity unlock to begin with when we started in October 2016. And now, of course, we are on the journey of from capacity unlock to capability unlock, as some of our colleagues were talking about. So I think, and if I just take a step back, why the capacity unlock is needed? Because if you really look at in anyone's life, a researcher's life, I would say there's more than 24 hours because we end up working 24/7. So there is more than 24 hours. But then if the definition of what research has to deliver and do changes from not when the insight is found, but after the insight is found. So our job doesn't stop in uncovering insights. Our job starts when the insights have been found. How do you drive into business for impact and growth? Yeah. How do you just make sure that you influence your business partners, you influence the company to take action based on those impacts? Yeah. So when you have to do that thing, then you have to unlock time, researchers' time to take away some of the things that can be possibly automated and done by a machine or done by people at a central location, rather than every individual doing the same thing. Yeah. And almost like streamlining the process where you can put some on the assembly line and something that then the researcher can pick it up from the assembly line and then add invest more time in changing behavior to act on insights rather than creating insights themselves. Yeah. So I think that was one of the key reasons that if the role of the researcher in the organization is changing, and we are expected more to drive insights rather than necessarily only generate insights, we thought the same researcher can't do it. Yeah, the same researcher can't do it around the world, and therefore we need to have a center where some of the, we call it cookie cutters, research which is templated, research which is part of a process, can just be done, automated, and can be done, in a central location, so that it frees up people's time to do something else. So that was one reason why it all started. And the second reason was the fact that if you really look at the cost of research, yeah, in some of the markets, especially in developed economies and in LATAM, is like 2x, 3x. I mean, India is not the comparison point because India is cheapest when it comes to research, but even on an average, they're much more expensive. And then we felt that, okay, if there are part of the research process that can be done centrally and can be done anywhere in the world, because it's not about collecting data in US, but it's about analyzing data and putting it into a certain format and template. We can do it with people in so-called cost-effective location, with due respect, like India, Poland, or somewhere else. And then we said, okay, why don't we do that? And that was the idea that, okay, we can then again make our money, research money, speak, much more useful by, driving ROI, but making sure that the cost of things that could be done in US and Latin and Europe much more expensively, we do it in places where it is much more effective. And India was one such market, because what India has is both. It has great talent and and people to do it, and at the same time the cost is not very high compared to the developed economy. So these were the two reasons: the role of researcher moving from insights to influencing, and the cost of research in developed economies versus in places where we can do it. That's where we created a hub in India. And then we realized that there were some challenges, and therefore we have now created few people also in Rotterdam, Poland, and exploring other markets.
Thanks, Nitesh. And I think it's an interesting perspective that you bring in saying that any process can be broken down into components. There are components that you need to kind of deliver with a certain talent in a certain location, and there are other components that can be either automated or centralized. And perhaps it is not just a question of the skill, but it is also what can be assembly lined in a way, right? And that's interesting. And to note that that's happening to what I call as high touch processes like insights generation and insights embedding in companies. Right? Thanks, Nitesh. Sujit, who we are not able to see on camera, he has camera issues. Sujit, how would you answer this question? And if you wear your PepsiCo hat, then what was the motivations? If there are some numbers you can provide, as you know, this is a public forum and there might be some confidentiality issues. But over to you, Sujit. What is your perspective on the estimate of share of India when it comes to data and insights from capability centers?
Yeah, so I kind of agree with what Nitesh just mentioned, and there are two aspects to it. When you look at pure monetary terms, it might be difficult to kind of evaluate because of the differences, the disparities. Whereas if you look at sheerly from the global capability centers, be it PepsiCo, be it Novartis or GSK, the rough estimate from the kind of deliveries that we are providing from the Center of Excellence or the GBS centers will be somewhere between 50 to 60%. I think Payal also did mention somewhere around 70%. My estimation in terms of be it headcounts, be it on or kind of quantity of delivery, I think it'll be around 50 to 60%.
Thanks, Sujit. So I'm just trying to sum up what I heard the panelists say. The first is it's not a small number. It is a significant proportion of whatever component of work this team or their respective organizations take up. The second is the interesting facet of how work is getting broken down and assembled into components that can be best done based on where the skill, talent, automation, and capabilities exist or the need exists. And the third thing that I'm hearing all of you say is that it is persistent, it is consistent, and it is only growing. Mitesh, you spoke about a journey that started in 16. Debarshi, my prior association from Cantor, I know it's actually much older, and Payal, I know a bit about IQVIA and its history. There's some pioneering work you guys have done to kind of establish India as a center of excellence. Thanks for that. Thanks for those perspectives. I think we have Dr. Abhay online. I don't know. We'll see when we see him. Or is he there? I think it's welcome,
Yeah, I'm
Dr.
here.
Abhay.
I just joined.
And glad you could make it. And we just started off the session. We thought we would have a question for you before we asked the other panelists, but I'm just making sure that I asked you now. We've just finished the first question where our panelists gave their views on, the share that India has when it comes to services like this. And what is your perspective, Dr. Sinha, in terms of why, I know Mithali and, our entire machinery would have engaged with you. What made you excited about this space? And what is your perspective that you've come to gather? And how does ACTC play a role in driving some of this? If you can just tell us from a policy perspective, how you look at things.
Thank you so much for this invitation, and I do apologize for joining it late. But at the same time, I have some takeaway and very important points, as this meeting coincided with something positive, a kind of development in the Ministry of Commerce. And that is, again, there is a talk of Amrit Kal. And 25 years down the line, by 2047, when India celebrates 100 years of its independence, where we will be in terms of our global trade. So there, if we analyze the data, whatever, as I just heard, and the potential, so market research definitely is one of the area we can look at. And the deliberations over there was to understand that in order to reach, say, for example, 1 trillion by 2030, what are the sectors which will be actually contributing in that export growth story? And how do we, there is a organic growth which is happening on its own without any support or whatever, like a certain contribution from this sector. But so far, market research has not been in the horizon, has not been there on the radar as one of the crucial sector which can play a very important role, not only on the, as the subject mentioned, research, but how it affects the other related area, the kind of industry for which researches are done, in what way they can contribute the growth story. So the idea was to understand the market. The idea was to prepare a document, and a task was, I did mention about this particular meeting. Idea was to understand that if it is any sector, now especially here the market research, in what way it is going to contribute in terms of the value. I believe 75% is exports. So whether the number will increase or the percentage will increase by 2047. So we have to prepare a vision paper, short term, mid term, and the long term. And milestones are for the coming financial year. That's short term as they have defined. Medium term for the period of 2030, 6 years down the line, and long term by 2047. So this is one of the important sector in the mandate given to the Service Export Promotion Council. So far, we have noted that industry was attached with services sector with this council for certain schemes. For a change, we would like to understand in what way we can add value to the growth story of the important sector like market research. So that's why our attention is on the sector. Yes.
Wonderful, and like yourself, the rest of the panelists are veterans from the industry, and I'm sure there are some angles and perspectives that you will hear from them that will ensure that we work together with you and the kind of reach that you can have as ACTC will be very different from the kind of reach that individual organizations can have. And I'm sure there's a way that we can make sure that we collectively work to achieve the Amrit Kal kind of destination and goal that we should collectively carry. Thank you very much for that. Diana, if you can hit the next slide and go to the next question, please. Right. So I think a bit of this was in a way also addressed when each of the panelists answered the earlier question. But perhaps if you can uh, look at various facets of the capability centers and the businesses that you run or other contexts that you might have heard of. What is the purpose of the global capability center? Obviously, India has skill, India has a certain cost advantage, and I think this has been known for more than 3 decades now, thanks to what the IT services industry kind of demonstrated, right? Now, on top of that, how would you kind of, I would say, restate this value equation, right? So perhaps, Nitesh, if I could start with you, and if you could hand over to Sujit at PepsiCo. And I'm just asking that from a captive perspective where, there is something that you run for the country, Nitesh, like, or the region, and there is something that you have to kind of ensure you deliver outside. So how would you kind of put this equation beyond just skill, capability, numbers, and money, right? Assuming this is a given, what is the new benchmark for us? You're on mute, Nitesh. You might want to unmute.
You're very kind. Thank you. You can't have a meeting without this being reminded once at least. Okay. Sure. So, Sundar, so thanks for that. So I think, as I said, we started as a capacity unlock. And you mentioned about the fact that you have skill, you have people, and you have cost advantage that India had. So that's clearly give us a head start. But that was the early journey. So now one of the biggest stride that we have made is how do we go from capacity to capability unlock? Yeah, and capability unlock not just as doing cookie cutters, something that can be doing assembly line, something which is systemized, but how do you add value on top of it? And that's where the fun also comes along with the base, which is equally critical. Yeah, it's like a house. As you can make as beautiful house you want to, but if the base is not strong, your house won't stand. So therefore, it's important that the base is taken care of. So now with the base taken care of, making sure that there is a standard quality of streamlined work happening, how do you add capability to it? Yeah. Now, 3 areas in which Hive has done very well for us. So one, the advantage of being co-located in a place called India is because HUL itself is a big crown in the Unilever entire world. Yeah. So therefore, a lot of cutting edge work in terms of technology that happens, HUL is at the forefront of it. And therefore, what happens, Hive almost becomes a kind of a hub to be able to experiment and pilot with a lot of those activities. Yeah. And therefore, often in our day-to-day work, we are so much running pillar to post that we don't get time to do out of box thinking or do something different. We always said, oh, wish I had time, wish we had time, if we're not running after a project, then we could have done something. Now that is where the role of Hive becomes very critical, because then Hive is also thinking about how do we get into building capability through experimenting with tools and techniques, with experimenting with kind of analysis or cross analysis that can be done. So then it almost becomes an experimental center on top of what the capacity unlock that I was talking about here. And that is huge, because a lot of that we have achieved in the last few years, and a lot of ideas, in terms of looking for what are the new ways we can do research, what are the new kinds of analysis we can do, that again, there is a space that is created through a team of people who are doing it for us. And therefore, once it's in a beta stage, then you can always pick it up and then run an experiment and try it. Yeah. So that is one area that I will talk about as a big one of experimentation. Second, India is, when you talk about entrepreneurs, India is, a lot of new companies which come up with new ideas. So now experimentation, not about tools and techniques in-house, but also exploring who are the other partners that we can work with. Yeah. So technology partners or research partners or partners in the time of automation or AI. So therefore, we also keep running from time to time. We have already ran once just around pandemic, and we are now running one which is called our version of Shark Tank, which is Insight Edge, which is about exploring who are the new partners we can work with? Are there different offerings in the market which can add value to the research process that we are doing here? So that again, that becomes a pillar where there is a team of people who can do and start with it. Yeah. Third, which is a big thing for us, is the talent provider. So because this is a hub which gets people, it's like early days. If you look at a life cycle of a researcher in Unilever, then when you need at an early stage, you need to be an expert in tools and techniques. Yeah. So therefore, this almost becomes a training ground for us, that people who join here, they are expert in training. They learn, they are part of the system, and then they are ready to take the plunge into bigger responsibilities within the talent pool of Unilever CMI. So therefore, they almost become a talent provider to not only HUL, which is co-located with, but also to anywhere else where there is a need for talent. And this is a talent which has been trained and with at least the base of knowing all the tools and techniques. So these are the three big purpose that for us this is serving. Yeah.
Thanks, Nitesh. Sujit, your views, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what Nitesh just mentioned is kind of universal in this sense. There are few things from my perspective what can work for the purpose of any global capability center is the centralized theme, saying that okay, in different countries there are certain things we can kind of bring in efficiency by standardizing things, and that's something which is one of the core purpose. And when we say standardize, always it resonates with something like standard processes and things like that, but it's beyond that. Many times these global capability centers are capable enough, and it has come of age. Earlier it was all the backend process or more transactional work, but things have evolved. Global capability centers are very much embedded into the system. I can say my experience here at PepsiCo also, the way we closely work with our business partners is significantly is part of the same team. It is not something that they're looking at somebody sitting in Hyderabad and making some basic process-oriented job. So, but what it brings in, saying that, okay, if we have a capability, Sundar, you can remember saying that, okay, when we were in Meritus Analytics also, it was all about sitting out of Bangalore. We were managing the marketing mix model program. And it was kind of, we know that, okay, how a particular framework which is standardized can bring in efficiency, and that has come of age with latest technologies and latest advent of machine learning and data-driven areas. I think the core purpose is to make sure bring in efficiency by standardizing and making sure that okay, you give a local flavor to other things. So that's is in addition to what Nitesh has already mentioned, the cost optimization or access to the skilled talent is table stake, I would say.
Thank you, Sujit, for that. Debashi and Payal, I'm just going to twist this question a little bit for you guys, right? Now, you heard clients say that, I'm doing my own work. Now, why do we need partners? Right? So think of it, there's place for everyone in the world. Don't get me wrong. Every major company will always have partners. And, we are not going to disappear as market service providers, right? But if you wear that hat in saying that you've heard two very large multinational companies, Unilever and PepsiCo, speak about how they have pretty much gone through the life cycles that Payal and Debashi, your respective organizations might have gone through as service providers, right? One is to say that I'm doing this for the rest of the organization for other clients where we are just an internal service provider. And Debashi, I guess in your case, you are the service provider, you are the face, you are the interface who's driving this work for a multinational across multiple markets. So how would you look at the global capability centers? Will your perspectives be any different from what you've heard Nitesh and Sujit speak about? While perhaps you started off and hand off the mic to Debashi then.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, Sundar.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Go on. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, thanks. So So yeah, I think obviously the clients are creating more and more this kind of capability centers, right? That's evident and obvious. But um what I think also the delivery hubs or the centers that, the service from a service provider point of view that offers is the knowledge bank of working across clients and offering development. I think I heard Nitesh also saying the same thing, that from a looking at the industry to know that what are the new things happening in the market, what offering that is being developed, right, and how it adds to the insights that the clients are already generating. See, I think we have reached to a point that everyone has so much of data, right? They don't need to go anywhere for data. What they need is that the lens that we will bring in as as partners, wherein we add the insights which helps the business to progress. And all the delivery hubs, be it captives and as the agencies, right, we are reaching to that directions, and we are working towards to reach to that direction. And that being said, another aspect of of this overall global capability centers that I see is that now, while there is obviously the efficiency part, and that the running the factory output, so to say, but I increasingly see that the businesses, the stakeholders that we work with, and the clients, they depend on us to bring in new thought process, new technology, new ways of working. I think that's one of the areas that earlier it was not a global hub or
Payal, we losing your voice. Perhaps it's your line. Can you repeat the last 10 seconds of what you said?
did I lose you?
Yeah, just take your video off. Your audio might come cleaner. You want to just switch off your video? Yeah, I mean, if you can just repeat what you said towards the end of your narrative.
Yeah, I was what I was saying is that increasingly I would say that rather than working as a from an efficiency or automation, or working on the report generation perspective, I see that the stakeholders and clients look at us in bringing in new thought process, new ways of working, process automation. So that is also one of the very important areas that increasingly becoming our performance indicator as from a hub or delivery capability standpoint. So yeah,
Wow.
that's my take on this.
Sure. Debashi, over to you. What's your, I know coming last, you have challenges, but I'm sure you have something new to offer. Right?
I think two aspects. I mean, one, I would like to highlight what Nitesh and Sid has mentioned on the India talent. I'll just mention one point, because one unique thing about India, I mean, other than the cost arbitrage and the talent part, the rich legacy of market research or the insights kind of thing. So let's say if you see any company, be it let's say service provider, be it client side, the senior role, many Indian diaspora, that kind of thing. So that gives, let's say, confidence for India as a hub. That's the one. The other part, I mean, if we let's say almost say like what Nitesh was mentioning and Judhish one is like, the other thing in unique is the blending of insights and the analytics part. Because in many countries we might have a very different hub and nav center to generate insights, whereas you need to go to completely different set of people and different country if you try to have, let's say, AI, ML kind of things. What India has done is like MR is very strong, and the almost like the entire legacy, everything. And what it was IT, now it has become, let's say, the AI, ML kind of things. That blending is becoming very consistent and prominent these days. It is not a separate tool kind of entity kind of thing. And India is providing all of them large legacy. That's, I would say, on the what is making India unique as compared to other countries. I mean, obviously, other than the talent and the cost arbitrage part. On the what we can service provider mention, I will echo what Payal mentioned. Like more and more cases, let's say the consumer sentiments are getting very consistent. So there's a lot of appetite we are seeing. Let's say for FMCG clients, they're asking how consumers are behaving. So how consumers are reacting to, let's say, social media is not any more different versus how they are behaving while buying or purchase decision for FMCG clients. So it's almost like consumer commonality. And as service provider, we can bring in, let's say, how consumers are, let's say, I mean, how the consumers are reacting in social media like TikTok and something, and how it will influence your companies as a purchase of the product. It may not anymore like conventional funnel that we used to follow. So that's the blending of how consumers reacting across categories, across, let's say, media consumption kind of thing. That's the blending part we can bring in along with the capability part, which all of us we have spoken about.
Thanks, Debarshi. That's fantastic. So just to kind of quickly sum up, we are saying, it is just starting with what Debarshi you mentioned. It's a combination of analytics and the ability to generate insights, right? The whole process, our ability to kind of bundle this together and bring this as a combined offering is the differentiation. And I'm also hearing all of you say that it doesn't matter who does it, because there is so much data coming in today that this capability is absolutely essential. And whether clients do it themselves or there are service providers who are doing it, there's a need for both to exist. And the critical role that service providers play is because they work across a cross section of customers. The ability to kind of surface new thinking and ideas is perhaps a little more broader there, as against a company trying to solve a particular problem. And I think there's variety that is brought to the mix and that solves those problems. Thank you very much. Very insightful. Diana, if you can hit the next question. I'm just doing a time check. We are 20 minutes away from our close. So I'm just going to take the option, dear panelists, and saying that I'm just going to ask the next couple of questions, not to all of you, but to some of you. But in case you have a definitive point to make, feel free to chip in, right? So here is the question to Debarshi for you, because I know perhaps you have one of the longest, so-called hubs or capability centers running. It's perhaps 15, 20 years old. So how has the landscape changed over the last decade from a capability center perspective? Obviously, some of it you already alluded to, process versus innovation versus development. Or there is something that you are seeing as a new evolution. You already alluded to it again and saying there is analytics and the process of insights kind of coming together, right? So how would you kind of answer this question? What has changed? Look at some years ago and the kind of work that was done perhaps a decade ago and today. What is the big shift?
Yeah. So the scope or the size of the business, I won't repeat because we have all spoken, but I mentioned two areas. One is like the softer aspect is like when you look at the global program, be it from client side or from a service provider, something like the level of confidence that has gone on India. So like almost 15 years back, we had to have a lot of credential. How can we service a global project? How can we, let's say, manage a project in Chile or Argentina or Japan, being in India? So that's the almost like you have to explain and everything kind of thing, and almost like do a pilot kind of thing. Now the confidence in India, I mean, you need to mention, let's say, your capability, but not capability in the India part. So that's almost given. That has changed, I think I would say 15 years. The other part was, I think, is a purely infrastructure part. I mean, 15 years back, let's say when you used to, I mean, I was that time posted in Korea, that if you have a presentation, I'm in India, the biggest headache from client is not report or insight. It's like, will video conference work? Will the facility work? You won't get visa on time. You won't be able to come to LATAM markets, and I can't manage workshop after you deliver the project. So I think be it the travel, be it, let's say, the almost understand the technology, everything works seamlessly, and especially with COVID, that's a great enabler. So whatever the doubt they had, that's almost a great enabler. So the infrastructure doubt, that part was completely dismissed. So now it's like we're in forefront on that perspective. I think these are the one of the softer aspect, the confidence. Other is the more of an infrastructure aspect. These two, I would say, significant changes happen, and rest of like India delivering project after project with different sites kind of thing that has embedded further.
Thanks, Debarshi. That's interesting. Sujit, to you, perhaps amongst all capability centers represented here, PepsiCo is perhaps the newest in the block, right? So what was PepsiCo's thinking? What did they thought they would do, and have you seen work being delivered rapidly, evolve and change, looking at what capability India could provide? Can you throw some light on that?
Yes, just to kind of before, so from the what has evolved over the years, I think what Debarshi mentioned is absolutely, it can resonate with all of us, seeing the way the struggle, the infrastructure and all. from the context of what excited some of the big players like be it PepsiCo, Novartis, or GSK is the first point, the baseline of it, the infrastructure. It's no more a problem. We need not find saying that okay, it is a well-connected system now. But if you look at in the last decade or so, there are multiple companies who have preferred India as a destination, and it's the other evolution that has happened is about the capability India as a destination provides, which is diversification of functions beyond your ITs and softwares, and hence there is a shift that has come towards higher value functions, which is beyond transactional. That's something I mentioned in the previous mention also. So the company like PepsiCo and all, the same principle applies, saying that okay, why it is a hot destination, while there are other what do you say destinations. There are 7 GBS centers for this thing, but PepsiCo itself is around, Hyderabad itself is around 50%, more than 50% of it. So in that context, all these things come into play. So saying that, okay, because of the larger base, the infrastructure has taken a big leap in the last 10 years. Similarly, the way the frameworks or the skill sets they have evolved, which can complement well with the infrastructure that we have. Those are the things which have are the trigger points where people have taken or the companies, the big companies have taken their stance for India.
Got it. Nitesh or Payal, if there's anything you would like to add, or I'm just clicking on to the next question.
Yeah, I'll just add one thing, in terms of change, because I like the Debarshi was talking about the behavior change in terms of the trust that India can do it, because when you are sitting in Chile or Spain, we have that confidence. And I think that is a big change we have also noticed over a period of time. It takes time. It doesn't come naturally on day one, but there is a journey, because the trust doesn't build overnight. Trust takes some time to build, but when it builds, it's there. And I think, and therefore, one of the key aspect required is letting go. Yeah. So therefore, when you are used to putting everything together to tell the story, you have to realize in today's world, you have to pick up nuggets from different pieces, in an assembly line to tell a bigger story, because then you have more information, faster information, and a better information. Yeah. And you can't do end-to-end everything. And I think over the journey, when people realize that, and then they are willing to do away with the syndrome that if it's not created here, it's not good. Yeah. So then they also know if it's created anywhere in the world, and especially in the context that all of you mentioned, if it's created in India, probably it's better. And then it just gets much more acceptance. So that was the big evolution I have seen, that how landscape is changing, where more and more belief in the world outside India is that if it is made in India, then it's really good. I mean, any of those kind of teething problem that we're talking about, COVID has only been a boom to us rather than a kind of a pain from that perspective, at least.
Got it. Thanks, Nitesh. DNF, if you can go to the next slide, please. I mean, we've spoken about this. Why don't you hit the next one? Yeah. For a lot of people, perhaps attending this call and building careers in marketing research or analytics or any allied spaces, there's always a question, right? Why should I work in a hub when I can work in an environment that actually challenges me, gives me a broader set of interactions, and I'm actually solving problems and feeling the change. Whereas when I work in a hub, I'm a step separated. So what does it mean? Why should I work in a hub? Say today I'm starting off. What would your pitch be to me to say, hey, come and work with my hub, right? So perhaps we'll start with you, Payal.
Thanks, Sundar. For me, I think apart from the obvious ones, and I will come to the obvious one a little later, but I think if I were a researcher, right, starting off my career, the reason I would choose to be in Hub because of two reasons for me. The exposure as a researcher I get working in Hub, working with multiple countries, understanding the country nuances, because understanding the consumer mindsets, that adds to me as a researcher. And I think that is unparalleled when, exposure that I get in a Hub. And at the same time, as a professional, the way I grow when I'm working with colleagues coming from multiple countries, multiple culture, the leadership, the negotiation skills, all the softer aspects that I gain working with them is significant. So I think these two are, for me, the drivers, apart from the obvious ones that are working for big multinational companies such as Lever, PepsiCo. They are all starting in hubs, so the brand names are definitely important. Apart from that, I would say the also the exposure within the company that you get, right, that because you are part of a global network and a global operation, you get to work with different, whatever you want to do, you have the option to choose within the company rather than moving outside, right? So that these are the obvious one. I would say that obviously that's there, but for me the driver is the way I could see for myself and my team, the way they have been growing as a professional, be it researcher, be it individual, because of the exposure. So that's for me the drivers in that.
Thanks, Payal. I'm still not sold on it, Nitesh. Can you improve the pitch?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So let me try. Sundar, building on what Payal was saying, and I agree with everything that Payal said. So first is like, if I break it into three parts, I spoke about that house analogy, correct? That you can't have a beautiful house if you don't have a great base. And therefore, the first thing that most of these hubs do, and I can definitely speak for the hub that we are running, is that your research fundamentals and CMI fundamentals, you can completely get, honing of that happens to the highest level. So therefore, you could be like, okay, we know what is the, different ifs and buts of research. So that is very important, that, and you get it across different kinds of research and not one kind of research, because you're all researchers which are getting SMB line here. So that is the first bucket that I put into it, honing your skills. Then one of the responsibility that we should also take as leaders of building this capability center is that people should also take pride in working in it. And I think that has to be built. And the reason I tell it, because moment that you think about it, and that's the reason, Sundar, your question is, the moment you think about a capability center, it is more seen as a capacity center and cheap research, rather than thinking as a something which is adding value. Yeah, and therefore it gets as a BPO, it's a back end, it's something which is not exciting. And how do you change that thing to bring pride in what you're doing by adding the elements that all of us spoke about? And one element was about, this is the place where, of course, you're building the base of the entire research. You're doing, as we call, cookie cutter. But then we also add, to bring that pride, that in addition to the cookie cutter, you're doing Boeing 747 kind of research also, yeah, or even better in today's context, yeah. Which basically then it's talk about how the entrepreneurship is about the fact that you can experiment with tools and technique, you can experiment with a lot of other partners to work with, and then the third stage would be, how do you take it further? So therefore, if you have to start with, research needs to be more augmented and predictive. Where to start from? Let's start here, pilot here, and then take it here. Research needs to be more agile, more automated and augmented. Again, this is the place to start here. So unless we don't build all three buckets together, that pride would not come. And I think that's more important, to not leave it just doing cookie cutters, do Boeing 747, make it more futuristic as a ground, very much like startups or entrepreneurships, capabilities to give it as a ground. And that is something which is very critical. And that's where the how you position that hub becomes very important to build pride in that. Yeah.
Thanks, Nitesh.
Sundar, I hope you would apply for next time that role comes.
Yeah, I am. I'll call.
Sundar
Show
can
me the
hear us,
money is
yeah.
the next question. I will call you then, right? Right. Thanks, Nitesh, for that. I'm just leading on to the next two questions, and since Dr. Abhay Sinha is there, it could be very useful. Perhaps Sujit, you can start. Just show us the next two questions, and that's what I'm going to ask our panelists to be. One is typical challenges with the hubs, right? And the other is the next one is Dina, if you go there, is how do you see the future, right? From where we are today, what is the evolution, right? And that's really where I think Dr. Abhay Sinha, you and your organization can help this flourishing industry to scale new heights and hit those lofty goals that we spoke of at the beginning of this call. So perhaps Debakshi, you can start in saying that what challenges think policy, think how the country or the government can facilitate or quasi-governmental organizations can facilitate. What comes to mind? Just one or two things. And where do you see the future? I mean, it's what is the next big thing? The way you see it, right? So Debakshi, you could pass the mic to Sujit, and then perhaps Nitesh and Payal, you can round it off, and then it will pass to you, Dr. Sinha, to kind of give your views. Yeah.
I'll keep thoughts. I think that from talent to the challenge perspective, one is like the almost like ensuring that we have the enough line and the retaining part, because in India part is a very, very dynamic. So it's the retention, that's one challenge. And which I think true for all industries. I won't say anything specific, but on the future part, I see, let's say it will continue to grow, but there's a multiple frontier. So one area is like, I think what Nitesh was mentioning, like, so from a capability perspective, how do you go to more landing of insights, more richness of insights, and the ensuring the business implications kind of zone. So that's the one area, and that was much richer from a career perspective. And other area possibly will be a lot more blending between the, let's say, conventional consumer insights to the ML AI part. So I'm saying it's happening, but there's a lot more opportunity on that frontier. These two, I would say, future opportunity along other than the normal growth path should continue.
Sujit, your views, please. Yeah.
Yeah. So from the challenge point of view, there are multiple challenges here. One is about the culture and communication. That can be a challenge because while India is diverse, which fosters creativity and all, but still, when you are kind of setting up a global capability center, this can be a challenge because you need to kind of adapt to a new culture. But that's still persist in some cases. But we are kind of as Indians, we are adapting to the situation. Similarly, the information in many cases are in silos, and hence knowledge transfer can be a challenge in the initial phase of it. Then when we are talking about the purpose of this kind of center is to have to establish standardizations, those kind of also at times will be a challenge related to the quality issues. So, and finally, probably a regulatory or compliance can be a challenge. But from a work delivery point of view, I would say culture and communication, knowledge transfer, because knowledge might be in information might be in silos, and establishing standardized practices can be a challenge beyond what Debakshi just mentioned about recruitment and things like that. But for the future, I can see a significant scope with all the companies striving for digital transformation, with the AI and ML, which are forefront of this thing, is going to kind of evolve further. Data is going to be the key ingredient in all of these things. So the future for all these kind of hubs are looking great. When I said these hubs, they are not going to kind of work in isolation. There is going to be ecosystems supported by all the existing service providers, and the startup ecosystem that we as India have will definitely fuel the growth.
Thanks, Sujit. Nitesh, quickly your views, and then Payal.
No, I think most things have been spoken about. I think some of the challenge I would say is about understanding the cultures that you work with, because sometimes it does take time. While of course, if you're producing only templated boxes of data and sending to them, then not. But when then you are getting from that level to the next level, Debashis was talking about inciting, and you're talking about, then the understanding the culture and the context becomes a challenge. So that's one. The second is understanding people, because the plus point is that you get to work with people around the world. But at the same time, different people, their expectations, what they like, what they don't like, you need to kind of get to know that also. So it's both challenge as well as a plus point when you get to know it. Third, for us, we are definitely, at least from an internal perspective, struggling with time zones, because then you almost have to build a capability center which runs 24/7, given that people are in different time zones and the research needs. And that's where the role of technology becomes very important, which both of you spoke about, in terms of how you get process automated. Now today we have a chatbot in our Hive, where some of the basic questions, some of the queries, you just put it and they answer it. So those kind of systems have to be put in place. But largely people have covered.
Thanks, Nitesh. Payal, anything to add?
No, I think I completely echo with all the three panelists have said, and I think that summed up everything beautifully.
Yeah. So Dr. Abhay, as you heard the panelists say, there's high amount of recognition. As a course of business, the need that we from the country collectively can solve is pretty high. It's in a fairly evolved state. And obviously, you heard them speak about infrastructure and how some of those are disappearing thanks to maturity levels at some of those technologies. Or just imagine this meeting. It's run largely without problems, right? Which wouldn't have been the case even 10 years ago, right? So what is your takeaway, Dr. Abhay? I mean, you heard them. Perhaps we didn't give you this is what policy can do for this charter to you. But just I'm sure you're meeting more people like us. Like Payal said, you probably meet a wide variety of industries as you try and help promote exports. What's your takeaway from whatever you've heard today?
You see, thanks for the opportunity. In fact, I've been meeting definitely a large cross section of the various industries. I see a lot of convergence also, and this is all pervasive, the research. And some of the points what have been mentioned about the challenges and everything. In one word, if I can sum it up, like we are enablers in terms of the challenges. Creating that enabling business environment across the border. And it has been like what ministry expects from all of us is to have a collective viewpoint which can lead the sector to growth. Are there any regulatory challenges we are facing? Because, as an organization, these informations are not with us. It is with you, the researchers, those are in the business. So 2-3 points are there, which I believe will be the takeaway in terms of much more feedback from every one of you. Is specifically, are there any trade barriers or regulatory issues we are facing in foreign markets, and also any regulatory barrier in India also, when you're talking about data centers or capability centers? Do you require some support in terms of infrastructure? That is also one point which ministry expects from us. Emerging trends, I believe that has been focused. So any emerging trend which can actually catapult the industry to the next level, if some points we can collect, that can be part of overall vision and strategy. Technological advancement, I think every one of us have actually mentioned about ML and AI. So how they are going to impact the business, and in what way the digital platforms or those technological advancement can be leveraged. So any expectation from the Ministry of Commerce or organizations like us. So these are the things. One more important point which is actually happening, and that also cuts across various sectors, is the trade agreements, FTAs are being negotiated. So any suggestion on that? So this is our role. So wherever you find that on these things, if something is there to be done by SCPC or Ministry of Commerce or any line ministry, we are there to serve.
So thanks, Dr. Abhay Sinha. I'm just going to remove my hat as the panelist and come to you as the service provider. And
Just one more point, if I can intervene. When I was interacting with your sector for the first time, a lot of thought process was on the brand image. Research is coming to India, and how do we develop that trust level or brand equity? So there we have a major role to play.
Absolutely. Dr. Sinha, I'm sure Mithali and the rest of the committee from the MRSI will chase up and we'll work together. But I think just three points that come to my mind as, I'm part of the service provider industry, right? One is the withholding taxes and, taxation that impacts us. Different countries have, obviously each sovereign country decides on its own. But as a body representing the industry, it's not unique to us. I'm sure every other exporter faces the same challenge. Any which way you can ease that up, or work that you're doing in that space will help. The other point is there are certain industries in which we are well known, especially the consumer insights, consumer research. That's really this forum, But the same set of tools, services, and context can apply to a much larger cross section of industries. The same processes can be applied where data and data insights are required, right? So I think one of the ways that perhaps one could think of as how policy can enable is actually abstract this capability and pitch it to allied industries, right? So this is what we do and what you have heard everybody from. They are from what I call as the marketing side of the business. For example, we don't play the same role with the supply chain side, or we don't do the same thing in fraud detection, for example, right? But capability is broadly the same. So one of the ways I think you can help catapult this industry is saying that, work with, we perhaps work together and find out how the same kind of templates and skills can abstract and be applied in allied industries, right? So that's, I think, the two key thoughts, that come to me. So we are just about 5 minutes over time. So we thank all of you for staying with us and being patient, and likewise for our audience. Thanks a lot again. Keep watching this space for an announcement for our next webinar. Nitesh, Debarshi, Dr. Abhay, Payal, and Sujit, thanks for being with us. Wonderful having you on board, and lead on and make India what it has to be, and its time has come. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good day.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Sundar. Thank you all. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.